Look closely at this quiet Dutch field on a cool spring afternoon. This ordinary patch of ground is allegedly where history's most infamous financial madness unfolded. Every economic disaster looks completely obvious once you already know how the story ends. Yet, while these manias are happening, the danger is almost never clear to those inside. Today we are ranking 8 legendary market crashes by one strict historical standard. We are measuring how much genuine, documented warning existed before the inevitable collapse arrived. This is not about modern hindsight or popular urban myths created centuries after the fact. At the very top of our list, someone foresaw the catastrophe down to its exact structural mechanics. He presented his findings directly to top officials 3 full years before the collapse occurred. Instead of taking action, the room openly mocked his presentation and dismissed every warning. We begin at number 8 with the absolute grandfather of financial law, Tulip Mania. Most people believe entire nations went bankrupt trading single flower bulbs in 1737. The popular tale claims wealthy nobles were reduced to utter beggary overnight by speculative madness. That dramatic version of history comes almost entirely from a single book written in 1841. Charles Mackay published Extraordinary Popular Delusions more than 200 years after the event. Historian Anne Goldgar spent years scouring actual Dutch municipal archives to uncover the real truth. She discovered that almost every sensational account stemmed from a contemporary religious propaganda pamphlets. The trade was actually confined to a small network of wealthy traders and specialized florists. Out of every prominent buyer she identified, fewer than 6 people suffered real financial distress. There were no widespread bankruptcies, no national economic crashes, and no waves of despairing suicides. Prices certainly spiked dramatically, rising 12-fold before crashing by roughly 90%. However, most contracts had never been settled, meaning hard cash rarely changed hands. It was primarily a social crisis of broken trust, when buyers simply refused to honor promises. Tulips were luxurious fashion items, and buying high fashion is rarely considered insane by contemporaries. Because the actual event was tiny, meaningful warnings were neither recorded nor particularly necessary. Moving to number 7, we arrive at the infamous South Sea Bubble of 1720. This manic scheme promised exclusive trading rights across South America to eager British investors. Sir Isaac Newton himself famously invested and lost an extraordinary fortune in the craze. He reportedly remarked that he could calculate the movement of stars, but not human madness. When one of history's greatest analytical minds fails to spot the danger, warning signs were scarce. The British government actively promoted the company to convert national debt into corporate equity. Because state authorities backed the project, official warnings were silenced or heavily suppressed. Investors assumed government backing guaranteed safety, completely missing the underlying structural flaw. The crash shattered British finance, but clear advance warnings were almost non-existent in public records. Rank 6 brings us to railway mania in 1840s Great Britain. This boom stands apart because the underlying infrastructure being built was genuinely revolutionary. Thousands of miles of track laid during the bubble remain active passenger routes today. Parliament approved hundreds of competing railway schemes without checking if routes were feasible. Engineers warned that proposed lines crossed impossible terrain or duplicated existing tracks uselessly. These technical warnings appeared in specialized journals, but general investors ignored technical details. When interest rates rose, families who committed life savings to unbuilt lines faced total ruin. Warnings existed in engineering circles, but they failed to reach or convince the broader public. At number 5, we examine the wild Florida land boom of the 1920s. Promoters sold land repeatedly to buyers who had never set foot in the state. Entire planned developments were platted out directly inside uninhabitable Florida swamp water. Local newspapers and environmental surveys clearly showed many lots were underwater half the year. Yet speculators bought land based solely on glossy promotional pamphlets and exaggerated promises. The market began stalling due to massive oversupply long before nature delivered the final blow. In 1926, a devastating hurricane slammed into Miami, exposing the sheer physical fragility. Physical geographic warnings were available to anyone who visited, but distant buyers preferred blind fantasy. Number 4 brings us to Wall Street and the classic crash of 1929. Warnings certainly existed, but they were scattered, heavily contested, and routinely dismissed by experts. Prominent economist Roger Babson famously warned of an impending crash in September 1929. Mainstream commentators immediately attacked his analysis, calling him an unpatriotic fearmonger. Leading economists famously declared stock prices had reached what looked like a permanently high plateau. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates slightly in early 1929 to curb margin borrowing. Yet financial institutions created private loan pools to bypass central bank restrictions and keep speculation alive. Warnings were present, but they were drowned out by unprecedented public optimism and financial trickery. At number 3, we examine the massive Japanese asset bubble of the late 1980s. A widely repeated story claims Tokyo's Imperial Palace grounds were worth more than all real estate in California. The palace gardens cover roughly 3.41 square kilometers in central Tokyo. Nearby land in Ginza was trading at $600,000 for just 3 square meters. Extrapolating that commercial rate across the entire palace grounds produced an estimated value of $852 billion. Here is the critical honesty beat. That famous figure was a theoretical calculation, not an actual market valuation. The Imperial Palace was never for sale and never traded a single square foot on the market. The metric cited for decades as evidence of peak market madness was merely an extrapolation from 2 tiny sales. Bank of Japan officials repeatedly raised interest rates starting in May 1989 to cool prices. Central bankers clearly saw the risk and deliberately took policy steps to pop the asset bubble. Japanese real estate values subsequently plummeted to approximately 1% of peak value in prime areas. Clear warnings existed within regulatory institutions, earning Japan the 3rd position on our ranking. Rank 2 belongs to the notorious dot-com bubble of 1999 to 2000. The warning signs here were entirely public, structural, and visible to anyone reading financial statements. Unprofitable internet companies with zero actual revenue routinely reached multi-billion-dollar market valuations. Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan famously warned of irrational exuberance as early as 1996. Barron's published a cover story in March 2000 explicitly titled "Burning Up," detailing cash drain. The article calculated that hundreds of listed tech firms would run completely out of cash within months. Yet distinguishing future tech giants from inevitable failures was remarkably difficult in advance. Companies like Amazon lost over 90% of their stock value before surviving to transform world commerce. The warnings were widespread and quantitative, but identifying which specific companies would endure remained tricky. Before revealing number 1, let us restate our foundational criterion once more. We are measuring explicit, documented warnings delivered before the crash, not retrospective storytelling. The top crash on our list takes the title because warning signs were delivered straight to regulators. Rank 1 belongs to the United States housing and subprime crisis of 2005 to 2008. In August 2005, economist Raghuram Rajan delivered a landmark paper at Jackson Hole. The prestigious annual conference was attended by world central bankers and top financial authorities. Rajan explicitly argued that complex financial innovations had made the global economy vastly more dangerous. He warned that bank compensation structures incentivized taking massive hidden tail risks for short-term profit. The reaction from the audience of central bankers and economists was remarkably hostile and dismissive. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers publicly called Rajan's paper misguided and foolishly anti-innovation. Meanwhile, analysts like Brooksley Bourne had tried regulating mortgage derivatives years earlier, only to be silenced. Investor Michael Burry systematically analyzed subprime mortgage bonds and placed massive bets against them. What separates 2008 from every other crash is that warnings were mathematically precise and public. The specific breakdown mechanism was presented directly to decision-makers 3 full years before panic hit. Authority figures actively chose to reject the warnings to preserve short-term profits and political comfort. When housing defaults accelerated in 2007, the global banking system froze entirely. Multi-billion-dollar investment banks collapsed within days, validating every rejected point in Rajan's paper. The reason bubbles look obvious in hindsight is survivor bias in historical memory. We always remember the solitary visionaries who turned out right while forgetting countless false alarms. Tulip Mania was largely fabricated by a Victorian author writing 2 centuries after the fact. Yet, 2008 was thoroughly documented, publicly debated, and explicitly ignored by authorities. Understanding the distinction between true warning signs and popular myths is vital for future markets. The next market mania will almost certainly look completely obvious to everyone in 10 years. Which of these 8 historical crashes surprised you the most based on the actual recorded warnings? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more deep documentary explorations.